Have you ever wondered why there are so many people that are gay, bi, trans, and so many different genders in the world today? I have. This video might give you some clarity. Now look at the stats before everybody loses their minds. I'll throw the graph up on screen, straight from Gallup. Just look at that climb, generation after generation. Steady increase, no slowing down. And don't even get me started on the neo-pronouns. We went from basic male and female to someone telling me they're cisgender. I'll admit it, I had the decency to ask what that meant before I responded.
The hell did you call me?
Hold on before you come for my neck. I'm in the camp of do whatever you want with your life, as long as you're not harming anyone and it's consensual. Do what you want to do. But the question still remains, why? And one of the answers actually surprised me. Some claim it's purely cultural. This isn't just a problem here in America, or even on this side of the world, so we can't blame our food for all of it, and I'll show you that later in the video. Other countries have it too, but theirs is a little more complicated than ours. Theirs is tied more to diet and culture, not necessarily what's being put in the food, though they've got plenty of plastic exposure too. Others swear it's totally natural. Now, this first clip, I don't agree with most of what this guy does, but every now and then, even he makes a good point.
The capacity of these chemicals that we are just raining down on our children right now to induce the very common sexual changes in them is something we need to be thinking about as a society. They're swimming through a soup of toxic chemicals today.
Get this straight. So traditionalists, people being born before 1946, only 1.7% of them are part of the LGBTQ community.
Hi there. I'm Cody. Pronouns em, ers, or zem, zers, or really any neo-pronouns that aren't ze, her, hers. I am a white transmasculine femme non-binary, temporarily mostly able-bodied, neurodivergent, obsessive-compulsive, chronically ill, culturally Jewish, Unitarian Universalist, non-monogamous, demi-low romantic, gray demi-bisexual, survivor of acute and complex trauma, millennial, and cat parent in mental health recovery.
You are so confusing.
Baby boomers are at 2.7%. Gen X is 3.3%. Millennials born from 1981 to 1996 are 11.2%. And Gen Z, kids born from 1997 to 2004, 20%? 1 out of 5? Really? That's really, naturally, that's how they were?
This is Dr. Shanna Swan, who's a renowned statistician. Back in the 90s, she was tasked by the National Academy of Sciences to investigate whether or not sperm count was declining. At first, she knew nothing about the subject. She didn't have a strong opinion on it, and that's why she thinks she was asked to do it, because she was unbiased. So she took the job.
One of the first things we did was to look at this paper that had come out a few years earlier out of Denmark. And this paper was alarming because it said that sperm count had dropped 50% in the prior 50 years. Okay? It came out in 92. All right. And so the committee asked me as a statistician, which is what my doctorate is in, to look at this and tell the committee whether this is something they could, consider for their work on the, in this committee. So I looked at the paper and I have to say I was not impressed.
Why weren't you impressed?
Well, first of all, it was very thin in terms of number of words and pictures and data. And the data that were there, if I had a graph, I could show it too, but you've seen it
Yes.
maybe, yeah. And a lot of the data were in recent years. They were kind of spotty over the time period. And more importantly, perhaps there were not, any of the factors that we worry about, which might cause an erroneous decline. None of those were considered. Somebody approaching this might think, well, okay, that went down because in more recent years, the men were older. That could make it down somewhat. Actually, sperm count doesn't decline dramatically with age, so that might be a small factor. Maybe the men are more stressed. That's probably happening. And stress actually does lower sperm count.
Okay.
And the men could have been more obese, and obesity lowers sperm count. And maybe most importantly, you might ask, well, maybe the way we count sperm has changed so that in recent years, the counting method counts lower. Methods change, and maybe they're not exactly the same over the 50 years, right? And finally, there was the question of who are these men? And maybe if you think about, you can't ask a man on the street to give a sperm sample, right? So a man has to volunteer, and he has to usually have a motivation to do that. And maybe he's doing that because he's going to get a vasectomy. Then he has very good sperm count, right? Because he's had a lot of children. Or maybe he's doing that because he's having trouble conceiving, and then he has low sperm count. So the selection of the population is really important.
Right.
Right? So there were 61 studies, and so I took out of those 61 studies, I got them, retrieved them, looked through them, and took out of them any information I had on these and other relevant factors. I also took out what country they were conducted in and so on and so forth. So all the details I could about the study. And then I and my colleagues put them in a spreadsheet and ran a more complicated analysis than had been done before. So we called it multivariable because we had all these variables in there, right? We're not just looking at the decline. And Danny, it was staggering to see that after all that work of 6 months and accounting for all these factors, the slope changed from minus 0.93 to minus 0.95. It didn't change at all.
Right.
That's million sperm per milliliter per year. And wow, I went back to the committee and I said, I can't make this go away. It looks like it's real. It's so unusual in science to see that consistency, So I thought, okay, this is something I really have to look at. What I did, I selected 4 cities in the United States with different environments, and I recruited the men in exactly the same way, so there wasn't that problem with selection bias. And I'll tell you in a minute how we did that. And then we measured the sperm exactly the same way in each of the 4 centers. You can't get semen from a man on the street. You can't get a random semen sample.
Right.
You just can't do it.
Oh, yes, you can.
Okay, so I decided that the group that absolutely always goes for medical care is pregnant women, almost always, right? So I decided to recruit pregnant women in order to recruit their husbands.
Okay.
Kind of devious, maybe. But we weren't asking them for a lot. We were asking them, the women, for a urine sample and a questionnaire and a blood sample. But they give that anyway when they're pregnant. So it wasn't really an imposition. And then from the husbands, we wanted, in addition, a semen sample, right? So we got over 900 men and women to do this. Yeah. Approximately equally distributed amongst our centers. And then we looked at their semen quality. And what we found was absolutely alarming and unexpected. And what we found was that the men living in central Missouri, in Columbia, had half as many moving sperm as men in Minneapolis.
Wow.
That's what I said. Wow.
And that's obviously due to...
Wait.
Okay, sorry.
We don't know. Okay, don't jump there.
Okay.
But your question, I know where you're going. You're going to say...
Agriculture
right.
and pesticides.
It turns out, very luckily for us, that you can measure pesticide exposure in the urine. And I remember I told you that we got the men's urine.
Yes.
So, and we got that at the same time they gave a semen sample.
Okay.
All right?
Right.
So we could ask, okay, are the levels of pesticides in the men's urine at that time when they gave the semen sample related to their sperm quality at that time? And the answer was yes. And we found 5 pesticides that were very different between men who had very good semen quality and very poor semen quality in Missouri, in our center in Missouri.
5 different pesticides.
Yeah.
Wow.
Phthalates.
Dr. Shanna Swan uncovered what many are calling a smoking gun regarding declining human fertility. Her research points directly to hormone-disrupting chemicals found in everyday pesticides as the primary driver behind plummeting sperm counts globally. Crucially, the impact extends far beyond adult men, affecting women and even developing babies in the womb. Dr. Swan narrowed the culprit down to a specific class of chemicals, phthalates. Phthalates are virtually inescapable in modern life. They hide in everyday items like soda bottles, shampoo, lotion, perfume, flame retardants, and clothing. Because they are in so many products, we come into contact with them constantly, and they absorb right through our skin. The consequences are profound. Beyond severely dropping sperm counts and threatening human fertility, Dr. Swan's research suggests that phthalates interfere with complex biochemical pathways in the brain, noting these disruptions can potentially influence gender expression. At a minimum, phthalates are driving down fertility and altering physical development. At their worst, Dr. Swan warns that this relentless drop in reproductive health poses a fundamental threat to the future of the human species.
Were to continue on its present course, well, that's a difficult thing to project, of course, but just mathematically, if you extended the line, it does hit 0 in 2045. So that's the median sperm count. That means half of men would have no sperm. Sometimes called the taint, or the gooch, or the grundle.
Very familiar with the gooch.
When the mother, let's say rat, was exposed to a phthalate, let's just say, I'm going to give you a name, diethylhexyl phthalate, DEHP, just so I can talk about it. That's probably the worst actor in this class for lowering testosterone. When the mother was exposed to that in early pregnancy, then her male offspring developed smaller penises, smaller scrotum, testes were less likely to descend, and there were internal changes as well, changes to the vas deferens and so epididymis and so on. And this distance that they'd been measuring for years, but which I and no other epidemiologists had not heard about, the distance from the anus to the genitals became shorter.
So I can't say that with a straight face.
And they called it the phthalate syndrome. When the mother was given phthalates in her food, at that time, testosterone is surging, that the surge is wiped out. It's eliminated. The graph is very dramatic.
Right.
It's just completely flat in males, genetic males. So that says that male needs that testosterone at that time to develop normally. My suspicion is that just as the genitals differentiate into male and female, the brain also does.
I was shocked to see that screens affect sperm. So that's kind of bizarre. Staring at your phone or watching too much TV can affect your sperm count.
Yeah, that was interesting. Yeah. That being a couch potato, actually.
Right.
It's tied to that.
Sitting
so you're
down.
watching your screen, you're not outside exercising. You're not riding your bike. You're not, right? So these are never one factor at a time.
It doesn't have so much to do with the lights going into your retinas. It's more to do with when people are connected to screens, they're sitting down, they're inactive.
That's right. For PCOS, for miscarriage, for testosterone, they're all declining at least 1% per year. You know, Tom, when I say to people 1% per year, they go, yeah, that's a lot. Then I say 50 years. That's how far back we've looked. That's 50%.
Yeah.
At least.
If you made it this far, please subscribe and like and comment.
Please, 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 please.
Here's the number that should bother you more than anything else in this video. Sperm counts have been falling by roughly 1% a year for decades straight. Dr. Shanna Swan, a reproductive epidemiologist at Mount Sinai, followed that curve out and says if it holds, median sperm count hits 0 by 2045. Even Swan says that's a risky extrapolation, and she doesn't fully believe we get there. But she also says there's no sign the trend is slowing down. Here's the part most people miss. This isn't just a you problem. When phthalates damage sperm, that damage doesn't stay contained to one man. Research is showing it gets passed down. A father with phthalate-driven sperm damage can pass genetic weakness to his son, undescended testicles, malformed genitals, and that son can carry the same weakened biology into the next generation. This is slow, it's generational, and most people have no idea it's already running through their own bloodline. We're not guessing what this looks like in practice. We already have the evidence, just not in humans yet. Polar bears in East Greenland carrying heavy pollutant loads show measurably smaller testicles and lower testosterone than bears with less exposure. In Lake Apopka, Florida, alligators exposed to decades of pesticide runoff saw their hatch rates collapse compared to alligators in cleaner nearby lakes. Bald eagles exposed to DDT were laying eggs with shells so thin they cracked under the weight of the parent sitting on them. Different species, same chemical family, same outcome. Reproduction breaks down. So who's making these chemicals? Mostly the plastics and pesticide industries, both built on petrochemical byproducts, both pulling in well over $100 billion combined last year. Nobody making that kind of money volunteers to stop, and the agency that's supposed to stop them for us doesn't have the budget or the teeth to get ahead of it. Most chemicals get approved first and questioned decades later, if they ever get questioned at all. When one does get flagged, like BPA did years back, companies rarely pull it. They tweak the molecule, rename it BPS, slap BPA-free on the label, and keep selling something with the same toxic profile under a cleaner name. New chemical, decades before anyone checks it, rename and repeat. If you made it this far, please subscribe and like and comment.